Ding dong. Hey everyone, it's me again. I thought today I'd talk about living images, the path to them, and the work with them. And what do I mean by living images? What I mean is, this is really something to do with meditation, and when I mean meditation, I don't necessarily mean the Eastern meditation. But I mean, in the West, we have this tradition of using or saying that the path of initiation is done in 3 levels: imagination, inspiration, and intuition. And what are those things? When we say imagination, do we just mean, thoughts in our mind? Well, the idea is no. The idea is that our mind isn't just a projector that projects thoughts. We have our own thoughts. Do we? Do we have our own thoughts? And we project these thoughts, and we think about them and fantasize. Which that's fantasize, or that's fantasy. That's mechanical fantasy. Or if we pacify our mind, and something just lurches into our mind, into our vision. What is that? Is that us? Our mind seemed to move by itself. Clearly we're receiving something. And so this is said to be real imagination, or magical imagination, or what you're trying to do in certain ritual work or certain hermetic reflective exercises. And it's somewhat interesting because I just want to talk about certain reflections of this. Like, first, how do you reach that? To reach that is something quite serious. To reach that, you almost need to go through the alchemical stage of putrefaction, the blackening. You need to go through the darkness within yourself. And that's to say, you need to kind of overcome yourself. You need to learn to just sit in a room for an hour by yourself with nothing. And you can have your eyes open or your eyes closed. I guess maybe it's better to have your eyes closed, but if you can't do that, just have your eyes open and focus on something. Use something as a support for your concentration. But what you're trying to do is, you're trying to train your attention. As I've said in other talks, it's like you have precious fabric that has landed on a rose bush or a thorny bush, and instead of ripping it off, you want to one by one, thorn by thorn, peel the fabric off. The fabric in this case is the mind, or your awareness, and the thorn bush is life. We live in a society, and so all of these things happen in our life. We have things that happened in our past, things that are going to happen in our future, work's coming up, and we're like, ugh, relationships, the world, gas prices, what you name it, buddy. What we're trying to do in meditation is, or in the beginning of the practice, is we're merely unhooking our attention off of these nodes, these mental nodes in the world. We're trying to focus on a candle, say, or an image that we have on our altar. And we start to fantasize, we start to wander off. But we bring ourselves back. And then we regird ourselves. I'm going to focus on this for at least 5 minutes. 5 seconds later, we're fantasizing, looking in the corner of the room. We bring ourselves back. That is the process that we go through. Through dedication, eventually we're able to maintain our attention just on one thing. And we can do this externally or internally. The idea is when you're looking at an image or a thought, or you're just positioning yourself and using even a somatic experience within you, like you've just settled yourself on your chest or at a point within your body as a support for meditation, things can arise. And those things that arise will have different flavors. The 2 main ones are they'll have the flavor of memory, something that happened to you or something that's constructed by you, memories and concepts that are you. The other things that will arise are things that have archetypal, mythological, or religious significance. These are the things that are important. And the other things can be important as well. Maybe there are some things in your life that you need to face. Maybe there's some things in your life that, things happen and they can create knots of energy within us. If you're walking down the street and your brain just thinks like, remember that time that you did that thing when you were a kid? And you're like, cringe. That's a knot of energy that's within you. It's just there. And every time you get close to it, it supplies itself with more cringe. The whole point is you're not trying to suppress those things, and you're also not trying to indulge in those things. There's like a middle point where if you're in an objective state, in a relaxed state, and that thing arises, it can be merely seen and processed and let go of. And if it works because the next time it arises, there's no emotional reaction. You are fundamentally a different person. This is all about, you could say, maintaining tranquility in meditation. But what is the end of this? The end of this is we see things. We see things within ourselves. If we're meditating on an image in particular, say we take a religious image, or say we take a tarot card. Let's be hermetic about this. We take the Magician tarot card and we plonk it in a little easel on our altar, and we meditate on it. What happens? We meditate on the image. Maybe we close our eyes and try to visualize it. That image starts to move, starts to manipulate. It creates associations naturally. That's what the mind does. Naturally, red will associate to something. Naturally, the plants will associate to something. Naturally, what he's holding will associate. We'll either think of it as a wand or a candle, or we'll see the implements he has on his altar, and we'll associate them with something. The sword with a knife, and with being attacked or attacking someone, which may bring up memories. The whole point is, if you have your attention and your intention focused on an image, what is the thing that's manipulating the image? What are the associations that are coming up? Those associations, those manipulations, those permutations of the image aren't you. You are not doing them. What they are subconscious psychic processes that are coming up. And so what you're doing when you're looking at this image is you're not trying to manipulate it. You're just sitting and you're watching as your mind itself manipulates it. And this can create a weird sensation, because it can basically create the sensation, you know how we say, you're not your mind. Yeah, you're not your mind, but you've only intellectually accepted that. To actually experience the you are not your mind is really creepy, because it's like, oh, it's almost like there's something that's been living inside of you, that has been living inside of you, that's been thinking thoughts for you. It's a really weird sensation. But you can kind of get that as a sensation in practices like this. And so why are we doing this? Why are we letting this happen? You're letting this process go and you're merely watching it because this allows us to study our subconscious. There's a bit of a misnomer when it comes to studying the subconscious or the unconscious, whatever you want to call it. I've heard people in certain schools say, oh, I've been studying my subconscious. Oh, I've noticed in my subconscious. Oh, I did this and did that, and I noticed, this subconscious thing in me. And it's like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. And why didn't they? Because if you notice something, then it's become conscious. And if it's conscious, then it's in your consciousness. And if it's a process that your consciousness does, and you can see it and notice it, via definition, it's not subconscious. Literally, it's not the subconscious. And that's an important distinction to make. So how do you study the subconscious then? You can't see the cause of you can't see the subconscious itself in front of you, but you can study the subconsciousness via its effects. And maybe you can, if you're one of those people who retrospect your day at the end of every day, you can see your subconscious acting throughout the day. But in this practice, which is very interesting because in the Jungian schools, they would either call this active imagination, or in the Neo-Hermetic schools, they call this Kabbalistic path working. And usually they choose a sphere of the Sephiroth and they choose an image that represents that sphere. And then they meditate on the image and they allow, you could say, their mind to process the image and the associations that come up. That's the kind of the subconscious processes. And they ignore things that are memory, and they watch for things that are archetypal, watch for things that are religious or mythological. And that has significance. Those are not just base desires or impulses or things from the ego or from infraconscious or weird parts of ourselves. No, if it has an archetypal nature to it or a religious or a mythological flavor to it, then those are things that are from a higher point, that are something higher is trying to speak to us through the symbols. An archetype in this sense is, or these things, it's like there are psychic organs within us that are trying to work, trying to communicate with us and give us data. And they can only give us their data through through symbols. So, our eyes are organs and they have a function, and we receive data through the eyes, and the data goes to our minds, and we're able to use that data to orientate ourselves in the world and live our lives. In this other way, we have psychic organs, and those psychic organs are almost like individual self-autonomous beings, but they are us, a part of us, and they start to work and they try to communicate to us, and they communicate to us. Normal people, they communicate to them through their dreams. Or if a normal person without any occult knowledge has an experience, usually Gurdjieff said it best. He says what happens is, because we live like this, we see ourselves as this, we live in a society and we're taught that we are this body and we're this, just our mind is in our head, we are separate from everything else. When something higher manifests, we literally cannot accept that it is a part of us. And so what happens? Well, what happens is it just extroverts. It's like rejected out of us, and it is represented to us as something divine. So when normal people have an experience and they say, God spoke to me, or I saw an angel, if they're not delusional, and it is a very legitimate experience, which does happen, that's usually their own higher functioning activating in a certain situation, just like ultra randomly. Like they have no occult experience, they have no knowledge of ritual magic or ceremonial magic or anything. It just activates for some reason. That's how it's represented to them. But to us, we want to go into dialogue with that. To us, God isn't a guy in a throne. God is a state of consciousness which we want to reach. And these images, these symbols that we see in our meditation, or it can be visions. I just use the term images, but images, visions, symbols, I like to call them living images, because they're not just dead images that we create through fantasy. They're images that become alive and are animated through the things inside of us. Working with these images is a bridge between the higher and the lower, in the same way that the water from a waterfall connects a lower body of water to a higher body of water. We're the lower body of water, we're the little puddle, the pool. That's our level of consciousness, and there's a higher level of consciousness, a giant stream that issues from a great mountain. That's what we're trying to connect to. We're trying to speak to that. And we want that to guide us, to inform us on our path. Where am I going? What books should I be reading? What practices should I be doing? How should I orientate my life? What should I be doing in this current political climate? Certain things like that. We can always collect data from the external world, but we should also be able to collect data from more subtle worlds. And this is the introduction for that, for any practicing Hermetic or Gnostic or magician or whatever you want to call yourself, or modern Kabbalist, Hermetic Kabbalist. You need to be able to do this, to interact with images. So the images can we can just go into meditation without any desire, without any aim, and we can just sit in silence, sit in the darkness, sit in our womb, close our eyes, and through tranquility, memories will arise, and sometimes something will arise, and we can focus on that and use that as a support for our meditation. Or we can go into meditation with an intention, with a tarot card or with a religious symbol. Or we can be like, I want a solution to a problem. Like maybe we have a problem with relationships, and so we get the glyph of Venus out, or like an angelic seal, and we just meditate on the angelic seal, of a Venusian angelic seal. This is a different way of using angelic seals, like seeing them not as entities, but almost like as archetypes. So you have a problem that needs to do more with like an office politics than you would use a Jupiterian glyph. Or something, you're having trouble with studies at school, so you use the glyph of Mercury or something like that. So we can allow symbols to arise, images to arise, and then we can focus on them, place our attention on them, and just allow it to unfold. Like, my God, my being, I only want what you want to give me. Or we can come in with an intention, like, come on, God, give it to me. I need this knowledge. And knowledge changes us. When you genuinely gain new knowledge, new experiences, you are something different. You are different from who you were before, because you are that plus knowledge, plus something new. You have literally changed your being via gaining and comprehending and understanding and integrating knowledge within you. And this is a way to do that. And it's interesting. Sometimes things just click when you do these long practices. And people get really upset, but I would say you have to do it for long. You should. The holy grail would be, imagine finding like 3 hours a day to do. That's something. Sometimes work goes overboard and you can't do it. Man, sometimes I just miss days, or I do a short one, but most days I get at least an hour in. Try to get 2 hours in. That 3-hour one, that's tough. But you get a lot out of it. You are literally doing the conjunctio, a conjunction in alchemy. The sword of King Arthur has been broken, and you're trying to connect the sword together, the two parts of the broken blade together. That's what has happened to us. We were once connected to that which was higher to us, but we've been separated. And that's what, the term religion comes from religare, but it's something to do with yoking, to re-yoke. Yoga means union. We're trying to, they say cleave usually means to separate, to cleave things in two, but they use cleave in some ancient texts, like, I want to cleave myself to God. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to access. It's almost like, that data bank, that universal mind, and to draw it into ourselves, to transform ourselves. So yeah, that's basically, I just wanted to talk about that, to talk about living images and the importance of that in our practice. We need to have that as a practice. I mainly use the tarot. What I do, I don't use the minor arcana, I just use the major arcana, so I just get a deck. I have an Egyptian deck and a Rider-Waite deck. I'm looking to, there's some pretty sexy decks that have come out recently, bro, but I'm a little bit poor at the moment, so it is what it is. But nonetheless, I usually grab the major arcana, and just every day and every morning, I just shuffle the deck, draw a card. It's one of the major arcana, priestess, emperor, whatever, tower. And you're not doing it as a divination. You're using the tarot here as a tool of education. The tarot in this case is to, you could say, your higher faculties, your emotions, your intuition, your imagination. It is to that what a book is to your intellect. So you're using impulse. I was going to say images and symbols. You're using impulse. You're using images, symbols to go into a visionary journey, using subconscious psychic impulses to direct you into a certain way. And you notice them. You notice the psychic impulses, the psychic operations. You begin to learn your subconscious, to differentiate between memory and true archetypal symbolism. And that should lead you in certain directions, lead you to modes of cognition and thinking that you would have never thought of otherwise. And this gives you real knowledge. This gives you vital knowledge. And in a way, when you perfect it, you're able to go beyond the symbol, beyond the image, and touch something. Go beyond form and touch the thing behind the form. That's the real experience. That's the real conjunctio. That's what the peepees touch. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now. Hope you all had a good day. Hope you all had a good time. I'll see you around.